Good evening. Cliff London, former mayor of Hopatcong, 68-year resident, 28-year veteran of the Lake Hopatcong Regional Planning Board, your predecessor agent, and 35-year sufferer from algae allergies to this lake. And let me also add, it was my master's thesis that actually started, was the first comprehensive water quality study on Lake Hopatcong, and ended up as Fred Lovelock's work. We have known about the problems for Lake Hopatcong for the past 40 years. Everything mentioned tonight was identified 40 years ago. What happened with this algae bloom is that the lake, that one beautiful creature out there, is sending us a message. Our efforts have failed. We are not doing enough. And I don't want to criticize the commission because I know you guys have been batting your heads up against the wall like we did for 28 years before you, because there's not enough resources. There's not enough people recognizing what the problem is. And what this lake has told us is that our efforts to date have failed. We must do more. The lake is not getting cleaner, the lake is not getting better, and we've got to redouble our efforts, okay? And it's gonna take a massive undertaking, okay? We must do something about sewers. We must do something about stormwater. We must do something to address the dredging. And it is not one government alone. It is state, it is local, and it is federal. It is everybody. And it is everybody in this room. Because the one thing that came up in my experience frequently is everybody says, you gotta do something about the lake, but don't do anything that costs me another penny, and don't do anything that affects my use of the lake. Well, we've got to recognize that everything that happens in the watershed is our responsibility, and we've got to redouble our efforts, but we need a massive influx of funds to address this. This is a message from the lake. We have not done enough to preserve this water body. Thank you.
John Persman, Lake Hopatcong. John Persman, Lake Hopatcong. In the DEP presentation, it mentioned the EPA report that they hadn't read yet or included yet. I've read that report. It's 294 pages. I brought an excerpt of it with me. And I have to say I'm shocked, and I just want to encourage the DEP to start implementing the EPA recommendations. Because, for instance, for the microsystems, you were using a threshold of 3. The EPA is using a threshold of 8. And they're basing that threshold on what recommendation for 6 to 10-year-olds. For 11 to 17-year-olds, their recommendation is 22, and for adults over 18, it's 40. Similarly, for the cylindrose option, which is the other category, it's 8, and as Fred Lubno also pointed out these numbers, EPA recommends 15 versus New Jersey's 8. But bear in mind, EPA is basing it on the data of a 2017 study done on 6 to 10-year-olds. They then took that data and said, how much water do 6 to 10-year-olds accidentally ingest, and factored in body weight, and that's how they then get, for 11 to 17-year-olds, it's 44, and for 18-year-olds, it's 80. So right now, the DEP is using a standard of 8, when for adults it's 80, a standard of 3, when it's a standard of 40 for adults. So some states have already implemented a phased approach of a warning, a watch, and then an advisory. And they are not jumping to signs all over the state that say, don't have contact with water. Similarly, on the cell count, we have a standard of 20,000 cells. They have in Pennsylvania 70,000, Idaho has 100, other states have 250. At the town level, or at the local level of this lake, must you really treat the entire lake as one place? Can't you just say, this beach is good, that beach isn't? And just look at, I mean, there's nothing in these standards that even say you must do any of these things. They only go to advisory level, not telling people have no contact with the water. And then I just want to say, you know, I've recommended that we follow the EPA guide. The EPA also has kits that say drains to lake, which we should put all over the storm drains. And when you're at any business, any residence, if you smell something, say something. It's a septic, it's failing. Let's focus on those. Thank you.
I'm Ron Sorensen from Lake Hopatcong. My concerns are more centered around the overreaction to all this reporting. I mean, my personal experience, I'm in a lake every single day. By the nature of my business, I'm in the water every single day. I have had no reactions, no rashes, and I got very sensitive skin. But regardless of that, I'm more concerned about the data and the limits. Now, one thing that Fred was showing us here is that the federal limits for thresholds are twice as high as that of the state of New Jersey. So all this testing that we're doing, how does a lake fare compared to the federal limits? And why are New Jersey limits so much lower than the federal limits? It seems like it's not a real science yet. No one really knows what level is a real problem. And things are like this being over-exaggerated. The media got a hold of it. It's on Route 80. It's on the Turnpike. I mean, it got so blown out of proportion to a point where people are even afraid to look at Lake Hopatcong. So I would like to ask, and maybe somebody address, why the big difference? I mean, literally, we're talking twice the levels that the federal people say it's okay, but New Jersey wants it to be so much better, and they want to knock it in half. So what's the real limits? What's the real problem area? It doesn't seem like there's a real exact science to me yet.
Thank you for the question. Right now, the difference between the federal numbers, which were just released, and New Jersey's numbers, by the way, New Jersey developed these numbers in the absence of any federal numbers. New Jersey's numbers were developed by the toxicologists and scientists of the Division of Science and Research with specific peer review of these numbers. We needed them because the federal government had nothing to offer us for guidance. Right now, the difference between those numbers makes no difference with our advisories because they're not based on the toxin levels. They're based on the cell counts. So right now, it does not make any practical difference in terms of whether you are applying the federal brand new guidelines for the toxins versus the numbers from New Jersey. I would also point out that there are a number of toxins for which EPA doesn't have any numbers. States have to act on those toxins, and we need to have scientifically based numbers of our own. And different states do have different numbers. California, for instance, has a lower cell count number than we have, and some lower toxin levels than we have. So it does vary. These numbers are not that different. And I guess the bottom line is application of EPA's numbers versus New Jersey's at this time would not make any difference in terms of our advice.
Hi, I'm Donna McCallie-Holly. I'm speaking as a 30-year lakefront resident, and as Tim Clancy would say, I'm not being affiliated with any other organization other than myself as a personal resident. I just would like to say that the information coming from the DEP is very helpful to have it available on the website right now. I just wish it could have been more readily available to our community because we've really been devastated by the impacts to businesses around the community, and having that information more readily available would have been helpful. So thank you for putting it on the website. But what I'd really like to hear from you, and if I missed it, I apologize, what is your plan to let us know when you're going to reopen this lake, and how are you going to get that word out to the public?
Thank you for that. We're incredibly acutely aware of your desire to know sooner rather than later, hopefully, when you'll be able to get back into section of the lake. It depends on what the data says. So at this point, we don't see any basis from the data. We really looked hard. I know our people worked really hard to try to do that, to find if there were sections that they could say were okay. But it's not looking like that right now. We can't give you a time frame. It depends on Mother Nature and what happens out there next. We can't control that, but what we can promise you that we will do is keep looking and let you know as soon as we can lift the advisory for any part of it.
Before we go any further,
Jeffrey Carey, I live in Hopatcong. I am a marine technician at one of the marinas on the lake. I'm also an avid water sports participant. My question for you folks is it a citable offense to go wakeboarding, water skiing, kayaking, swimming, etc. in Lake Hopatcong? No. No. Fantastic. Thanks. Have a good night.
I'm Rich McFadden,
from Lake Hopatcong waterfront owner, also a licensed engineer. That doesn't mean I'm certified in microbiology, but looking out for the public interest is basically my business. Ms. Commissioner, looking at the data you guys have just posted this afternoon, and I'll say it satirically, I don't know why you didn't present it tonight. On the 26th, I would have made the exact same decision. I would have closed the lake. I would have said that we had issues. Your aerial coverage showed 80% coverage of the lake with a bloom. You then repeated a flight on the 28th. It was down to 50%. You repeated a flight on the 30th. It's posted on your site, and 95% of the lake is clear. Explain to me why the flight on the 3rd hasn't been posted, nor the data from the 5th has been posted. At the end of the day, I believe there's a bloom. I believe it needs to be dealt with. All the stormwater issues need to be dealt with. But the damage that can be done from hysterical, inflated media concerns can actually be more devastating than what's going on here. You need to take a hard look at this data that you're now producing and really consider lifting the ban and correcting the damage that's been done to date.
All right, that's a great point, and we are just developing this aerial ability to estimate microcystin or phycocyanin levels using remote sensing. You cannot rely solely on remote sensing. The remote sensing is a tool that allows us to look at large expanses of a lake. We also use the same technology or a similar technology on our coastal flights along the beaches. It allows us to pinpoint where an algal bloom is occurring, and then we can send staff out to take physical samples of the water. We don't have 100% correlation between what that sensor is showing and what the cell counts are. So when we saw that the sensor data was showing that the bloom was dissipating, we put all our boots on the ground. We sent everybody out there to grab samples. We sent them in the lab to analyze those samples, to run the toxins with the hope that we would be able to partially reopen the lake in time for 4th of July. We were very upset when the cell count results came in and did not 100% collaborate what the sensor was telling us. We still had, and there was no pattern. We looked at the main lake, hoping that we'd be able to open up the main lake. We looked at the north. We looked at the south. There was no way that we could define a geographic area and say definitively, go ahead, go back in the water, go back swimming, go back and have primary contact. Our number one concern is public health. We're not trying to hide anything. We're trying to protect people, protect your families, protect your grandchildren, your children. And it was our call based on the science, based on the levels that were developed by our scientists, that we couldn't pull that advisory at the time. And we're going to go out there every Tuesday, every Thursday, and continue to test. As soon as we see levels consistently below that 20,000 cell count, we're going to do everything in our power to lift the advisory, whether it be in sections, whether it be for the whole lake, whatever is supported by the monitoring results. So we did a precautionary closure of the lake and gave an advisory saying don't come in contact. We also did specific closures at specific bathing beaches. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and we will, when we see that the cell counts in the main lake are below the 20,000, we will then go out and start testing the beaches. And we're not going to test every single beach. We're going to test beaches that are representative of a larger geographic area. So if it's Byram Cove, we test 2 beaches in Byram Cove. They both pass 2 days in a row. We'll lift it in that entire area. So we're going to try to look at this. We're going to work our way around to the beaches. What we base it on is there's no visual hab anymore. And if the cell counts are below and the toxin levels are below. So we're going to work our way around as rapidly as possible. But I can't guarantee that this is going to happen next week or the week after. These things tend to persist.
It's Patty Sinelli. I run the Lake Hopatcong Adventure Company, and my tours, I do guided tours around the lake with hydro bikes and pedal boards. So right now, I cannot do anything because we have an advisory, correct? I was wondering, I forgot your name, I'm sorry. You said heavily exposure would lead to a rash or an effect on your body. You said heavily exposed. What constitutes heavily exposure?
I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact, what you were referring to in terms of heavily exposed, but we are concerned with dermal contact with the water.
So is it like a minute? Is it like 4 hours? Is it?
I'm not certain that I can give you an exact time, I'm afraid. And there are different sensitivities to different individuals, so there's no precise time. But it is, actual dermal contact with the water that we are concerned about, as well as if you are swimming, potential incidental ingestion, which is equivalent to, drinking some of the water. So those are the two biggest concerns.
Okay. I also just wanted to see if we can really hop on these towns to really knock down this whole septic issue.
Yes.
I mean, we need to, do we get everybody to pump their tanks out once a year? I don't know. Let's I'm all about doing the storm drain thing. Let's go check it out and clean them out. I don't care.
Not just lakefronts, everywhere.
Yeah, everybody. Let's do it. All right. Thank you.
My concerns are for the health.
Name and address.
Jerry Kramer, Maxim Drive. My concerns are for the health of the community. I personally have had 2 children, one very sick. Nobody is confirming whether this is from the lake or not. I have other friends that have had multiple health issues, all related in my neighborhood at the lake. There's no one to report to. There's no doctor to speak to. The doctors have no idea what this is and how to treat it. We need some guidance. Our physicians and our health department need some guidance on where we can report this and get information for our health from the lake.
What are the symptoms?
There's been multiple symptoms. Flu-like, where it seemed like he had mono, but it was negative. Severe to the point where I would have taken him to the ER. He saw 4 different physicians. My other son had it milder. Friends of mine have had diarrhea. My sister had the rash and a massive cough. All of us are on massive steroids that are not helping.
Jerry, where were they swimming?
It's over in the Byron Cove area and the Henderson Cove area. Whether we were contaminated or not, I don't know. Whether it's related or not, I don't know. There is no one to go to for answers. I called the DEP, they did not answer me back. The doctors just say they don't know what it is. So we need some help for our health of our community, reporting system, and someone to give us information.
Strongly encourage you to report the symptoms which are potential concern, certainly, to the local county health department, okay? And the Department of Health has an epidemiology program. The name is Public Health and Food Protection Program. Their number?
Can we get a list of reporting agencies?
I'm sorry.
Report to?
The local health department, your local health department, okay. And then the Department of Health, they are representatives on the interagency harmful algal bloom work group I talked about, the Department of Health. They have epidemiology folks that are on that group, so they know about potential health effects from harmful algal blooms. And I'll give you a number that you could call 609-826-4935. I'll repeat that, 609-826-4935. They would urge you probably first, if you can, to report to your local health department, but they are also there to answer questions about that. The These numbers are on our website under some of our fact sheets that we have on there too, if you don't get this number. But the Department of Health, the epidemiologists there are familiar with the harmful algal bloom potential effects, and would urge you to either call them or to call your local health department.
So that would.
Okay, I know someone did ask about the health department from Byram. So you can call Public Health Nursing at 973-579-0350. Ask for Public Health Nursing, and they can give you information on the effects and also on which doctors have been notified that there may be potential algal bloom symptoms that are coming through them.
Is there an antibiotic? Is there a medicine to treat it?
That I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't have the answer to that question.
Did you know that?
Not at this point. I mean, they're
Yeah, right
working-
now, not at this point. There's not a way to treat it.
It's a bacteria, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it literally, not until 2014, people were really not concerned about it.
Julia Summers and Elliot Ruger from the New Jersey Highlands Coalition. We are a coalition of a variety of organizations, more than 100, all of whom care about the Highlands. Today, on their behalf, we're here to support a solution, whatever that may be, to the harmful algal blooms in the lake. In case you don't know, recently legislation was signed by the governor that makes possible the creation of local or regional stormwater utilities. It is not the coalition's position at this time that creating a stormwater utility is the way to go for Lake Hopatcong to address the HABs. However, it is our position that a utility must be on the table as part of a suite of possible solutions. To work, any solution is almost certainly not going to be simple or quick. It is likely to include addressing faulty or non-functioning septics, removal of stormwater contaminants, and limiting fertilizer of lawns. We also need to map impervious cover in the region, the hardtop we have covered our landscape with, to identify any pinch points where it might be most effective to apply stormwater management tools. Until we do the research specific to the lake, we don't know the correct answers, although you got a lot of them from Fred today. We don't know the correct answers, and only when we have the answers will we know if a utility is needed.
My name is Elliot Ruga. I'm the Policy and Communications Director for the New Jersey Highlands Coalition. And I agree, of course, everything my boss said, but I'd like to add a couple of things. That now is the time that voluntary measures and recommendations won't work any longer. The issue is critical. We need the towns that surround the lake to get together, work hard. Money, funding, these solutions, stormwater solutions, are not free. Grant funding will not pay for everything. This is going to be an effort that the entire community has to participate in. If people want to maintain their property values, their livelihoods, and the businesses that depend on recreational use of the lake, we can do it, but it's going to take hard work and commitment. Thank you.
You're right. I've asked repeatedly for the phosphorus and nitrogen levels in that stream that's been pouring in our lake for over 100 days now. And when you see the clouds, and you've all seen the magazines, here's another one I'll hand to DEP that shows the plume of water entering this lake, and DEP fully was aware of it, and I didn't think it was going to be an impact, but now I found out that granite has phosphorus in great numbers, 436 parts per million, double it if there's iron. We have iron. This may very well be that out-of-bounds thing we're looking for. Why did this happen months after this? Running here today. So before we chase our tails any further about all these things that have been constant and bad and not well run, let's look at that stream and get the phosphorus level and the nitrogen level and start with that, please. 100 days it's been running in the lake.
Hi, I'm April Lieber. I'm president of Community Association of Prospect Point.
or Cat Beach. I also work for the Jefferson Chronicle, but I'm not working for them tonight. I'm here for Cat. So you answered a lot of my questions, and I appreciate that. I was looking for transparency. I see it on the website. That's great. We're not on your list. We're not on your testing list. If you require 2 samples, we're never going to open. Can someone make sure we get on the list for testing?
Can you restate the name of your association?
Community Association of Prospect Point. We're at 2 Main Street, M-A-I-N-E. States matter over in Prospect Point. So we have a close sign, we have no warning sign, we have no danger sign, we have no testing.
We test off that beach, so the negative values that we got, one of the signs.
You tested, but the DEP has not.
Correct.
So if it requires our warning going away with 2 clean tests, we're never gonna get it. The other thing I wanted to say was regarding dog patrol, and we talked about geese, is if nobody's ever used it, we use a dog patrol at our beach. We have dogs go down in the morning, dogs go down in the evening. In between, people swim. Obviously, we make sure the dogs are cleaned up. We have the least geese excrement on our beach. We virtually have none. So if nobody has been doing that, get your dogs out there. They love to chase them. And it's free. Mayor Susan, I know it is a new administration. When I was growing up and even beyond, I asked about sewers and I was told, not in your lifetime. I know you're new, but I'm going to task you to this on the agenda for the council and for you, is Jefferson certainly needs some sewers in there. We have high hills. This is all running into our lake. Lastly, I want to confirm that stagnation is a problem on the lake that creates this growth. So the marketing and the word that has been put out there by the press is don't touch the lake, don't touch the water. The message should be get on your boats and ride. Because people staying off this lake is causing one of the factors that is making that algae grow. So get on your boats and ride.
The question was whether or not either the algae or the compounds are airborne. They're not airborne in the sense that they're in the atmosphere. Obviously, if you get sprayed with water and they're in the water, they're up in the air hitting you, but they do not go up into the air themselves. So it's not like an airborne toxin. It has to be associated with the water.
Not like Star Trek spores.
Exactly, yeah.
Hi, my name's David Gaddick. I own Lakeside Marina in Landing. This advisory from the start has been publicized as the lake is closed, which was never the case, and it has completely devastated the businesses around the lake, not only mine, the restaurants, other marinas. I mean, from last Saturday, having a blinking sign on Route 80 to say Lake Hopatcong is closed is absolutely ludicrous. It would be nice to know if we could get sections of the lake open again, or not open, the advisory lifted, that people could go to different parts, not necessarily Byram Cove, but other parts of the lake to swim and water ski and tube and do other things. Your findings didn't find positive results. The EPA's or the DEP's did. There's got to be some kind of happy medium to the findings to get people back to the lake, people coming back to the lake, either they're renting boats, fishing, water skiing, tubing, swimming, whatever they are here to do. It would be nice to have some kind of timeline, some kind of projection on when we can expect something like that to happen. Thank you.
Barbara Loring, Borough of Hopatcong. You mentioned something about aeration. And I've asked, he mentioned something about aeration. Would it help if everybody who owned a bubbler turned their bubblers on and started aerating this water? Would that change some of the dynamics? There's a lot of bubblers on the lake. And they could, ice eaters, bubblers, whatever. It moves water, it aerates it, it throws it up. And I asked Fred Steinbaum and he didn't know. Should we all put our bubblers in and turn them on?
I'll just answer it real quick. I mean, if you turned all the bubblers on a very localized basis, you may see a benefit in terms of you don't have an accumulation of cells, but other spots you may turn your bubbler on and literally see no effect. What you need to do is get an idea of, the size and the depth of your cove or your shoreline, and know how the prevailing winds operate, because just bubbling vertically may not do it. You may need a horizontal circulation system.
Well, we can turn it any direction.
The thing is what you need to do is you need to have some data on your shoreline so that you could design that bubbler or that circulation system or that mixer to be appropriate for that site.
Could we get that out? I mean, we've got a huge shoreline.
And like I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of shoreline bathymetric data that's not that old. We did it maybe 3-4 years ago. So if you contact the commission, they can forward your information to us, and then we can provide them with the data. So at least you have some information on your section of the lake if we've done it, and then you can approach someone about designing something appropriate for your site. Just turning the bubblers on, it might work, it might not work.
It can't hurt. It can't hurt.
It can't hurt, but if you have that bubbler too close to the shoreline, I'm just saying, you're causing a lot of erosion, and you're breaking up that shoreline. That soil associated with that shoreline can slump in, and it has a lot of phosphorus associated with it. So you actually may exacerbate the problem with a bubbler.
Mine is between two docks at 10 feet out, and I'm in River Styx on the outside of the bridge, where that water moves constantly.
We've used circulation systems in the past for certain large coves, and what you can do there is, like you're saying, experiment. Say, okay, what if it's out here? What sort of impact am I going to have relative if it's over here? But again, it'd be better to have data on your site to know what would be the most appropriate way of circulating out.
Lake Hopatcong. I have 2 points I'd like to make. First, about the quarry at the end of northern tip of the lake. I really would like to understand its impact. I didn't see it mentioned anywhere in the presentation, and I don't know if that's because it's felt there is no impact or the impact hasn't been studied. But it would reassure me to know that someone has looked into the impact that their leakage for 100 days into our lake had and how it's affected the levels of all the things that are measured within the lake. And so I just want to know that that would be included in another study that would be done, determine if it had any impact or caused this in any way. My other comment is that when a press release is done, such as was made about the lake and was taken by the newspapers and the media, that it include more useful information. I think that when the decision was first made to put the advisory out, I was not even in the state of New Jersey, and I couldn't believe what I heard, and I was searching for information, and the DEP did not have the information available yet, and there was a lack of information available. So I think that when an advisory is made, it should include data, specific data, counts, levels, things that people can use to make informed decisions, because without any real information, people start forming their own conclusions, and it goes from panic to total disregard. So real data is needed in the case of panic. Thank you.
The quarry, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. I believe that one of our sampling sites is in the vicinity of that, so we will have some water quality data recent. I think Fred has more information.
Yes, we did some sampling in the stream, as well as we do our routine monitoring for phosphorus. And 2 things. One is we did see an increase of fine silt material being deposited in the stream. We provided that report to the commission. In addition to that, we have seen over the last few years, as was previously mentioned, that the phosphorus concentrations in the in-lake station, immediately down gradient of that stream, has increased over the years. And so in June, when I showed those elevated phosphorus concentrations with an average of 0.043, the highest concentration at station 10 was 0.07, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot of phosphorus. And it was coming from somewhere immediately up gradient of that sampling station and that's where the quarry is located. So we do have some information to show that there's some elevated phosphorus concentrations coming in from that section of the watershed.
Well, back in February, there was a discharge from the quarry from their stormwater ponds that they used to wash their quarry material. We issued NOVs to them twice, and from my understanding, the repairs were made, and that there's no ongoing discharge from the quarry. But what we're going to do is we'll look into that. We'll reach back out to the Bureau Chief from Northern Bureau of Water Compliance and Enforcement and confirm that that's the case. There's also been penalties issued in this case, and there is going to be some remediation, but I don't know off the top of my head. You know, I don't have that information to share with you.
Thank you. I'm just a resident, James Masalewski from the Elba Point area of Hopatcong. I've been living at the lake since I was 6 years old, and you can tell from the color of my hair, it must be well over 50 years. I know there are people here with immediate economic interests in the lake, and I sympathize. But as a resident, and many residents here, I think we all wish that the lake water quality approximates more, say, the water quality of Lake George than, say, Lime Kool-Aid. And we only have to look down off our docks to know that the lake is sick, right? So I would suggest maybe one of the topics that was discussed here is septics. And I know we have mayors in the audience. I know in Hopatcong, they were thinking about requiring some kind of regular 3-year or some annual basis septic cleaning. Mandatory, not what? They canceled it, yes. So I would ask the mayor, knowing that I'm not a smart person, based on what you've heard here today, would you support mandatory septic or not? Because you would. Is that a yes or no? Yes, thank you. Okay, appreciate that. And the second thing is, you know, the phosphorus is the food. But I'm thinking in some cases like Spruce Run, it has a different environmental footprint than Hopatcong. And to me, you have boats that go between lakes, and I know Lake George requires hull inspections. Are you thinking about, so no hull inspections would be required? And finally, the person in front of me asked, new buoy markers, when are they going to be? Where are they going to be?
You're talking about the sensor buoys? Okay.
Yeah.
They will be in 2 open areas of the lake. One of the areas was ST2 in the center portion of the lake. And actually, I'm not certain whether the EP one is going to go. Okay, and the second one will be in the southern portion of the lake, closer to the state park.
Thank you.
Yeah, and USGS is responsible for one of them, so we thank them.
Hi, Likens, resident of Sussex County. I just have a quick question and a comment. The question is, in the news media, there was some conversation about the wells, the well water, and is there any kind of testing being done on well waters that are closer to the lake, and just making sure that that part is safe. And then my comment is, if I understand correctly, that you're just testing on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and given the economic impact that is affecting this region, I would encourage you to do it every day until we can get it open.
My name is Phil Riley. I live in 14 Poultry Place, Andover, New Jersey. I'm part owner of a company called Watermark Technologies. I'd like to give you an idea what this perfect storm was that hit this lake this year. March, April, May, and June, the rainfall each month was between 6 and 8 inches. When that level of rainfall hits a cold lake, you create a thermocline. So the warm water is only 3 or 4 feet deep. The next thing that happens is the water table all around the lake rises. Probably 75% of the homes in this community have septic tanks and leach pits, and they're 30 years old. And a 30-year-old leach pit is a piece of concrete with holes in it. That leach pit is full, and that stuff is coming from the septic tank into the leach pit, going to the surface and seeping right straight into the lake. And that's the perfect storm that you had this year. The problem is that perfect storm can happen again next year unless we do one thing. And the people, consultants said one of the things you need to do is get rid of phosphate. There's really only one good way to get rid of phosphate in any lake, and it's been done in hundreds of lakes across the entire United States. And that is you need to treat it with a neutralized aluminum sulfate precipitate. The solubility of aluminum phosphate is 10 to the minus 19. So what you do is you treat the column of lake, the flock comes down and settles, and it sits over top of the mud. Now, the problem with phosphate is, if you just clean the column, that ain't gonna work, because the mud contains a lot of phosphate that can leach right back into the column. So what you have to do is you have to trap the phosphate in the mud. So you create this aluminum hydroxide flock. It sits down on top of the mud and it stops the phosphate from coming in. My proposal to this group and to the state is you do a test and you run the test next April. That means you got to start to work on it today. And what that means is you take soil samples, you figure out where you're going to do the test. My suggestion is you do it at Byram Cove and out from Byram Cove a while, maybe 300 acres. And you take, let me just finish it. You take the samples and you do and you set up and do it. The cost is approximately $200,000 per 1,000 acres to be treated. It's not insurmountable, but you will have a test to show how you can prevent the lake from going bad, control the lake, and eventually have something for treating the rest of the lake. Thank you.
Joyce Gallagher from Crescent Cove. My question is, I've heard it not a practical difference, and cell count. Now you're talking about blue-green algae, cyanobacteria. If you're counting that, that's not the toxic stuff. It's when that dies that it releases the cyanotoxins. But it doesn't sound like you're counting the toxins, but that's what makes it a harmful algae bloom. So if you have these two monitoring buoys out in very main portions of the lake, that's kind of not where people are swimming. So those counts, A, is it the actual bacteria or is it the toxins? That's the first question.
Thank you for the question. We are testing both the cell counts as well as the toxins, both in the laboratory. They're both being tested. The buoys we were referring to are not the test mechanisms for those two things. They're helping us understand the water quality, the changes in water quality that may relate to harmful algal bloom. So the actual measurements that you're asking about are done in the lab, and it's both cell counts as well as toxins.
So the monitoring buoys aren't testing, they're monitoring the water to see if they can produce there?
So we're monitoring both water quality impacts that come from a harmful algal bloom and water quality impacts that can relate to helping to generate the harmful algal bloom. We are also, as I recall, looking at the pigment itself. Okay, so one of the things that we're doing with those is actually measuring the unique pigment we talked about before that is unique to cyanobacteria. So that will also help us. The reason these buoys are important is because this is continuous monitoring. It's not, filling the bottle, doing it one day, coming back 2 days later. It's continuous. So it helps.
It's not going to be immediately accurate for swimmability.
Right, the swimmability is done in the beaches and in the open areas of the lake, and that is both cell counts and toxins.
And I just want to add, as far as everyone knows, I think you guys said 40% of this is storm water runoff, and then there's septics, and there's salt, which is also an issue, because salt that comes off the road kills the zooplankton, and zooplankton eats algae. So that's an issue that really wasn't addressed. But we've got septics, we've got global warming, we've got the perfect storm now. But in all the runoff, if you put in active carbon filters, that's what kills cyanobacteria before it can actually make its way into the lake. But that means we need filters in all the runoff, in all the drains, and it needs to be maintained and cleaned out. So it's not just the drains and what's collected there and whether it gets sucked out or not. You need the right filters in there to filter out the cyanide bacteria before it turns toxic. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Sarah Schindler. I live on Lakeside Boulevard in Hopatcong. I lived here for 23 years. On the map that you guys had up there, it's pretty interesting. Where I live, which is part of Hopatcong, where our sewers, there's nothing. Sorry. So where I live on the lake in Hopatcong, where there's sewers, there's nothing on that map that they put up there. There's no reports, there's nothing. I do have algae off my dock. It's not a lot. But what I find more interesting, having listened to all this information, and I know there are a lot of people in this room working really, really hard to figure out what's going on and why this is happening and why did it happen this year and what do we do about it. But the interesting thing to me is that all of you at the DEP and the Lake Commission are saying to us as residents, what are you going to do in your community to fix this problem? Because if you don't do something, we're going to shut down your lake. Well, if it's our lake, let us take care of it. Let us do what needs to happen, or help us. Help us figure out what the solution is. Give us some funding. Give us some autonomy. Give us some of the millions and millions of tax dollars that we send to Trenton that goes to the shore. Give it to the lake. You can't just put it on all of the residents of the lake when all of our money goes somewhere else. So I'm charging you at the DEP, get to your people in Trenton and talk to them. Because maybe they'll listen to you because they sure don't listen to us.
I've been affiliated with the lake for started. Kids from Hopatcong went to Dover High School because they didn't have a high school in Hopatcong. And I gravitated to Lake Hopatcong and been here ever since. And being a lifeguard at the state park, you could see across this room under the water. That's how good the lake was. And being also a fisherman, the handwriting was on the wall. And they started ordering different types of fish that could live in a mud puddle to survive Lake Hopatcong, because the trout were dying off and the people weren't catching the trout. And the state still puts them in, but I think it's maybe to appease a few people. But for the last 3 years, there's been a green cloud coming across the main lake of Lake Hopatcong. And it just seemed like the state lucked out, because in August of the last 3 years now, some of you people may want to check on this, we had such an abundance of rain. And I think it had something to do with the pH in the lake, but that green cloud disappeared and we lucked out. And I even mentioned it to people, the state really lucked out. Well, just recently I was eating lunch and the guy was telling me about a housing development on Edison Road. And there's a couple hundred homes, I think, up there. And I'm a real estate broker, but I don't know how many homes were in that development. But they're all big, nice colonials and everything. And I thought they had septic systems. But it seems to be down hidden in the woods down there. Be like behind Jefferson Lumber and the Catholic Church that's there, opposite Cherry Road down in the back. There's a sewer plant down there. I don't know if anyone knows that. Well, I went down and, you know, being a fisherman, look at, when you're in a river that's clean water, you pick up a rock, it's clean and dry and crisp. And that rock represents, to me, the reason they put rocks in the septic system is because the rocks grab the impurities. Well, it's the same way in a river. Those rocks grab the impurities. And I went and I visited that river the other day myself. And I'm just telling you, it's disgusting what's going on. And it's sort of hidden. That river, it comes in behind Jefferson Lumber, and it actually, I think, comes out under the state police barracks. All right? But then I took it a step further, and I didn't look at the tax records or anything, but the DEP owns that sewer plant. Now, is that right? Does someone here know that?
for a minute, but you see how sewer plant operators work, and I'm telling this because somebody could question me all they want. When you get an abundance of rain and the water's running down through there and it's all brown, they don't want to treat that sewage, they open it up, and I've caught many of them doing it. Now, what about the Musconetcong River? If it's not safe to eat the trout or the fish in Lake Hopatcong, probably you shouldn't eat them in Lake Musconetcong. That's something they should tell us, and the Musconetcong River. All right, one second. One of the best trout fishing places, all right, in New Jersey was a place called Saxon Falls, all right, and I'm sure a lot of you heard about that. And you go there, that's disgusting, the river is disgusting. You wouldn't even eat a fish out of it. And it's all because of that sewer plant that's in the trade zone.
How you doing? Thank you. My name is Greg Borman. I'm a representative of the New Jersey Sierra Club. Most of the issues that I'm addressing are statewide. I'm just going to address some of the solutions. One is the first thing you should do is to tighten up your standards and move out and reestablish your water protection and the stream buffer zones that were rolled back by the Christie administration. The second thing is to take a look at and establish strong total maximum load limits for phosphorus, nitrogen. Okay, thank you. Establish total maximum load limits for phosphorus, nitrogen, and other pollutants. Establish good watershed planning with an emphasis on stormwater management and restore septic management districts as we had in the past. The other point I'd like to make is that local communities need to step up to reduce overdevelopment and sprawl in environmentally sensitive areas. The other hat that I wear is also the hub coordinator for the Sunrise Movement, which objective is to take bold action on climate change. We've been looking at your DEP's and EPU's energy master plan, and we took a look at some of the recommendations from Rutgers energy storage assessment. And one of the things that may help this particular thing to reduce the water runoff is in support of the wind and renewable energies is the aspect of developing hydro power storage units. And he specifically recommended that the northern New Jersey section be examined, for that opportunity. They felt that there's a lot of geological structure that is available here. Anyways, thank you.